Земля, люди-боги и мы, распятые на кресте толкования.
I suggest to get out of our continent finally, to transcend Eurasia and to get to America, because some Asian people, it's too late for them to participate, and so the night is coming. Night is covering us more and more, but in America there is a day. If we could make all night and day day long conference, for example, having so many friends in different continents, we can make it without the end, a kind of passing from the place where there is, for example, already the evening, and speaking, it coming once more to the evening, so to the same point, same starting point. It is really wonderful. I would like to give the word of the speaker from United States of America, to very known writer and figure, Michael Springman, please.
Thank you, Professor, for telling us the sad news about Nader Talibzadeh being stricken with that damn virus. I've met him. I've had the honor of speaking with him and to the Iranian people through his television show. But anyway, let me go on to what I have to say. I'm an American attorney, a political commentator, author, and former diplomat. I've been assigned to embassies and consulates in Germany, India, and Saudi Arabia, and back to the State Department here in Washington. I think I can add some light to how we got to where we are by talking about my two books, Visas for Al-Qaeda, CIA Handouts That Rocked the World, and the follow-on, Goodbye Europe, Hello Chaos, Merkel's Migrant Bomb. In the first book, I drew on my experiences at the CIA's consulate in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, and went on to investigate the creation of, the American creation of Islamic terrorism, starting out with destroying Afghanistan in the guise of fighting the Soviet Union, and then destroying Yugoslavia, then Iraq, then Libya, and then Syria. And of course, since 1953, the United States has been trying without success to destroy Iran. But essentially what the Americans did was create attacks on various countries that were weak. They had disparate religions and cultures and tensions within the country by various ethnic groups. And they used these people that they had gotten out of Afghanistan to destroy them and did a great job of it. The follow-on book, Goodbye Europe, Hello Chaos, Merkel's Migrant Bomb, that showed how the United States built on its efforts in Latin America and the Caribbean to destroy democratic governments there and replace them with authoritarian and repressive ones, and destroying their economy. And of course, this created a great wave of migration to the United States, which the Americans object to. They took this very highly successful concept and use it to South and Southwest Asia and North Africa by driving out the people of those countries into Europe after having destroyed their factories and their houses and water purification plants and sewage treatment plants and so on. And they used as their guidebook Kelly Greenhill's Weapons of Mass Destruction. She's close to the American establishment and the national security state. And basically what it is, the concept is to herd these people out of their own country, weakening it. They don't have any doctors, lawyers, Indian chiefs, or mechanics, or seamstresses, or anybody else. They've been driven into Europe, carefully managed by the American intelligence services and others, and then creating tensions in Europe, trying to split Germany and Europe away from Russia with its vast natural resources, and to create tensions within each of the governments in Europe. You've got people welcoming the migrants with open arms, with candy and flowers, and you've got other people who say, wait a minute, this is our country. We get to say who comes and who goes and who stays. And you wind up weakening Europe, preventing a unified Europe, preventing a continent that could be a competition to the United States. And you've got the United States in the end as a winner with low birth rates replaced by hordes of migrants with no ties to the country. They have different religions, they have different cultures, they have different languages. There's no Dari speaker pool in Europe. There are no Arabic speakers in any great extent. There are no Urdu speakers and Pashtun speakers, and so on. So you've got essentially cheap labor designed to be slave labor, essentially, both in the United States and in Europe. And the view, of course, is, oh, we have to help them because they're leaving their own countries. Well, if the United States didn't destroy all of their own countries and left the factories intact, people would still have jobs. There would be no need to migrate. There would be no need to force themselves to give up their own cultures and adapt to someone else's culture. So the whole basis of all of this is the arrogance of the United States to create an Americanized Europe instead of Charles de Gaulle's European Europe. So you've got basically major problems nobody wants to look at, nobody wants to talk about, because this challenges the accepted wisdom of the mass media. It challenges the accepted wisdom of the mass governments, and the people themselves who want change, who want real change, are ignored and pushed to one side. So essentially, that's pretty much the basics of what I have to say. I'm not going to bore you all to tears. If you got any questions, you can get in touch with me. My email is mike@mikespringman with 2Ns.net.
Thank you very much. I have put in the chat some link on your books if someone will be interested. That's very important documents, and I see that there are more and more very competent people from United States who are changing the camp. They come to the rest against the globalist elite, and they are patriots. They try to restore the dignity and the freedom of thought and speech and the principles of United States of America. And I'm very happy that the number of such persons are very high-placed diplomats, officials in the United States that dare to challenge the conventional wisdom of liberalism that is intolerant is growing. So I thank you for your participation. Now we are coming to our hope. To our hope, it is Latin America. So the continent of the future, the continent of undefined and indefinite identity and of identity in the process, and that is great opportunity and great possibility to be involved in the creation of the image of the future. So I have many hope in Latin America. So I think that is that Latin America belongs to the world of the future. It has the past, the roots, but at the same time as the spirit of Ariel in the Shakespearean theater. Latin America should create something that everybody in the world will be astonished. Will regard with open mouth. So please, one of the more active representative of first political theory and great man from Brazil, Rafael Machado. It's up to you.
My name is Rafael Machado. I lead Nova Resistência, which I believe is the biggest fourth political organization in the Americas, at least. And well, my short speech here is going to tackle the subject of what we are actually doing to develop a Brazilian fourth political theory, which I believe is very innovative. And well, Brazil is a very young country, so we don't actually have, as a nation, the same millennia of history of other countries. But well, what I think it's great that I'm talking about this as one of the last persons to talk here in this conference, because I'm going to tackle the subject of fourth political praxis, which is a chapter which I think it's one of the most important of fourth political theory book. And well, it's based on transcending the duality between theory and praxis, and that's our action base, the basis of our action. So in this sense, we're trying to build an applied theory or a principled praxis. So and based on it, I wrote an article, a very short sketch of an article, as a matter of fact, which we use here in Brazil as a methodology of the fourth political theory, which we have deduced from repeated readings of the book. So in the sense, Brazil is for us and for the fourth political theory a kind of test field. And it's very challenging because it's a country of a continental dimension, pluricultural, pluriethnic, underdeveloped, and with very little sovereignty. So, well, this is a subject that I could speak about for hours. But, to actually begin what we want to say, to build a fourth political theory, we needed to choose a kind of foundation. A foundation that was already present, that should be already present on our political history. And I think that's something that could be useful for other countries, to take a look at your own history and to know what should be used as a kind of foundation for a fourth political theory. In the case of Brazil, we have chosen the ideology of the late president of Brazil, Getúlio Vargas, which is reasonably famous. In Brazil, his ideology is called trabalhismo. It would be something like laborism or something like that, which is actually a third political theory ideology. It could be called the Brazilian third political theory. But what do we actually do with it? We apply the critical, the critic tools, the critic weapons of the fourth political theory to deconstruct this national ideology, to purge it from its modern problems. And I could talk a lot about it, but just needed just for a kind of example. For example, this ideology we are trying to revise or review or criticize and build upon, it was the classic kind of nationalism, etc., etc. But well, this kind, although it is a third political theory ideology, choosing something like that is very important because we need something that has actual roots on our history, and it can actually speak to people's feelings, because there are still people who remember this ideology and who feel emotionally attached to it. So, for example, in other countries, it could be a kind of ideology based on the second political theory, like China, for example, which could build a fourth political theory based on a kind of synthesis between Maoism and Confucianism, etc. So this is the basis, you know, this is how we talk to common people about the fourth political theory. But since, like all modern political theories, this ideology we are tackling, laborism, is a modern ideology, so it lacks the aspect of tradition. And that's one of the major elements we add to this old nationalist ideology of Brazil. So we deconstruct it, we add tradition, and then, well, we have something that is actually at the same time new and enrooted in our past. So it isn't just a kind of red nationalism or a nationalist communism, but it's something that is it's a kind of political translation of the traditional metaphysics that is innate to Brazilian people, to the context and the challenges of postmodernity. So it isn't just mere nationalism, and that's especially important, and that's something that I think resonates with Lohan James' speech, is that Brazil, it's a kind of a natural empire in the traditional sense. It's a place full of African people, of European people, of mixed people, of native people, and then the ideologies of the past, the modern ideologies, they trying to impose the same kind of pattern of identity, one identity for all. So you should, if you are Brazilian, you should forget your roots in other continents and be this official version of what a Brazilian should be. And this is still current, you know, when foreign people think about Brazil, they think about only soccer and, you know, carnival and other stereotypical images that our media sell to the whole world. But Brazil is a kind of a place that, and Professor Dugin knows it, it's a very unique place. In certain sense, it's a very magical place, a place where religion, for example, the major religion of Brazil is Catholicism, but it isn't the kind of formal dogmatic Catholicism. It's a kind of folk Catholicism, a Catholicism that has still many aspects of pagan religiosity. So this is all part of what we are working with. We are trying to return to study not only the history of Brazil, the official history of Brazil, but I think that all the constructions of all the national constructions of the fourth political theory in each place should return not to a specific historical past simply, but to a mythic time. And in the case of Brazil, for example, most of the myths are not known worldwide. But for example, we are talking about and reading about and studying about and including creating a sacred geography map of Brazil, studying the lost cities of Amazon, the myths of underground cities, the prophecies of a tropical Rome. And that's very important for us. The notion of Brazil is also one of the heirs of the empire, of the spiritual empire of Rome. The myths of King Sebastian, who is a kind of King Arthur figure of Portugal and Brazil, and there is a kind of cult of this lost king, of this once and future king in Brazil. The Celtic myth of Hey Brazil, you know, the island at the west, the island, the paradisiac island of the west, which we think is the basis for the name of our country. So we have been tackling all this, the philosophical aspect, and we are also trying to build an actual militant movement. Our organization has 200 members, official members, and we are trying to build a new kind of organization, which is at the same time a think tank, a kind of clan. You know, Tim Kirby talked about the idea of family as an interesting basis. We are trying to build a kind of connection between people who follow the fourth political theory, and at the same time a legion, an order in the sense of Julius Evola. So we are trying to build the idea of an integral man, just like for example, the political theories of the past had the idea of the political soldier, which became a simulacrum. We are trying to build, and not only thinking, you know, we are trying to actually think and build at the same time on the spot, you know, and talking to common people, using ideas, for example, from Alexander Dugin, the idea of the left of the workers and rights of values from Alan Sorel, which resonates very strongly in Brazil. Brazilian people is leftist on an economic sense and rightist on a cultural sense. And I think that maybe this kind of feeling that the people, that the common people has, maybe it also is like this in other countries. So maybe this kind of formula is useful for everyone. Well, and the current situation is that Brazil is under a liberal hegemony, and our country is basically under occupation, under siege and occupation. And well, that's what we are fighting against, and that's the backdrop of what we are doing. And we are going to keep fighting, and we are dedicated to build this, to turn this prophecy of a tropical Rome into reality. So that's my speech, and sorry for the time I spent.
Thank you. Thank you. It was worth listening. Thank you very much. It was great. It is a great introduction to the continent. So starting from Brazil, and I think that very important to rediscover the myth now. Myth doesn't belong to the past. This is option. To have the myth, to have or not to have, to live inside of the myth or not to live inside of the myth is the option, is the choice. It is not some given, taken for granted. For example, in the past we believed in the myth and now we don't believe. In the past there were someone who didn't believe in myth, and now there are someone who still believe in, or always believe in myth. So I think sacred dimension is always here. That is it is not, we are not devoid of the sacred dimension. We just don't want to open our eyes on it. So that is extremely important, to add spiritual and sacred dimension to social, political, practical way of life. And I think that Nova Resistência in Brazil is the example of this enracinement, to put the roots, in enracinement, to have the roots in the society. I think that another example is the Georgian initiative for our friend Levan, who put his ideas into practice, building the schools, building the churches, monasteries, and creating a kind of agricultural community, trying to restore the Georgian identity in the practice. So it is very important, practical dimension, not only fight against, but to fight for something and trying to do something with being the prince. Levan Vasadze is making the labor, the work, the job of the normal people, of the peasants, without any, and not feeling himself humiliated, but that is noble. The real job, real work is noble, something noble. So the noblest of the fourth political theory is not to hesitate in front of the work. So the work is the life. We should put the sacred dimension in that. So very nice speech, dear Raphael. Now we are coming to very important. If Brazil is giant country with population much more than Russian population, it is continent. Brazil is huge, really. Now we are coming to the small country, Trinidad and Tobago. But Trinidad and Tobago, in Trinidad and Tobago, there are two great persons living there. So for this relatively small country is too much. There is Kirk Meigo, who will speak, and our friend Imran Hussein. So two very illustrious persons for such a small country is makes this country great, I think. Please, Kirk Meigo, it's up to you.
There's so much that I would love to talk to you about. I want to thank you for this opportunity. But I had to write it down to limit myself. So that's what I'm going to try to do. I want you to know also that I am actually politically active. I'm a member of the official opposition party, and we have an election next week. And I do hope we take government. It's very possible. And I'd like you to wish us luck, because I really want to help to make this fourth political theory movement stronger and practical. Now, in my view, the fourth political theory, it's an elegant articulation of a universal truth. When I first came across the theory, which is relatively recently, I was amazed at how it fit in with the work that a small group of us have been doing here in the Caribbean for decades. You mentioned Sheikh Imran Hussein, whom I love dearly. And there's a whole tradition behind us of people like Lloyd Best and V.S. Naipaul and CLR James, and it's quite amazing. Now, so I come from this local intellectual tradition, right? And a specific one called the New World Group. And this was formed from the time we were becoming independent in the 1960s. Some of us resisted the Cold War between American liberal capitalism on one hand and Soviet communism on the other hand. Right? So what I want to do here in the brief time I have is to share some of our insights so that we can collaborate, because there's so much that's in sync. So but let's start with the Caribbean's place in modernity. The Caribbean was the birthplace of Western imperialism and therefore the modern world, even before many places, and I'll explain that why. This is where Columbus and his voyages came. Right? Whole societies were created out of pure economic interest. Our friends in Brazil will certainly recognize this as well. There's a lot in common. So these societies were created out of pure economic interest, vulgar and brutal materialism, pure. We were foundational to the internationalization of production, the internationalization of finance, of distribution and trade chains, and extreme inequality. Right? All of our production was exported. All of our necessities were imported. We produced nothing for our own use, not our clothes, not our food, not our shelter. We created vast proto-industrial plantations based on imported cheap labor here. And this predated industrial capitalism in Europe. So we have always represented the dark side of modernity, and we've always been aware of that. Modernity was not something bright for us. It was always dark, right? So we have also been engaged in a long struggle against this modernity, and both in the form of trying to create autonomous societies that try to free themselves from imperialism, the anti-imperialist struggle, but also in the form of providing some of the most cogent critiques of imperialism, including the hypocrisy of its chief ideology, which is liberalism. Liberalism is the ideology of imperialism. So I want to share 4 main insights because I know we have limited time. So I'll be very brief. So one of them is that the metaphysical and the material cannot be extricated from one another. We have problems of poverty, exploitation, etc. But these are manifestations of modernism and modernity. It's not exceptions. So modernization is not the solution to our poverty, to our material deprivation. We've been arguing this since the 1960s, resisting both, the liberal capitalism of America and Soviet communism, as I said earlier. Now, we recognize that the neoliberal order being imposed on the world right now is merely the slave paradigm that was started here in the Caribbean. I'd love to elaborate on it more, but let me just leave that seed with you to think about it. I'm sure you'll see the parallels. But so what I'm saying is that the 4th political theory, it must have an attractive material economic manifestation as well. Because I believe if it's not successful materially, it will not be successful politically, philosophically, or otherwise. So 2, the second insight of ours that I think we can share is that there are both external constraints and internal constraints. For instance, Lloyd Best, my great mentor, the late Lloyd Best, a great, great mind. I wish you could have met him, Professor Dugan. But our task is to develop epistemological sovereignty. So not only are we materially exploited by outsiders, but there is a strong internal mental colonialism, which occupies our very souls. Right? It not only affects our ideas about politics and economics, but also about God, about beauty, about the world and our place in it. And people like Marcus Garvey or Malcolm X or Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture, Louis Farrakhan, and others have been important in this critique. So the third thing, I know time is a constraint, so I'll just go quickly. The third thing is a question of size. We are small societies. My island is only 1.3 million people. But often huge changes in history come from small places and groups. To dismantle modernity should also mean a respect for the autonomy of small societies and communities like ours. Our small societies in the Caribbean are like the small city-states of ancient Greece, in which Plato and Aristotle and the great philosophers flourished. They're the same size as the Florentine city-states of the Renaissance. These places were like 40,000 people at their maximum population. In fact, I believe our societies are truly human scale, not the mega cities of millions of people where you're just an anonymous number and you don't even know your neighbors, you have no roots, you own no property, you're always on the move, you're servants of international financial capitalism and modern advertising, right? And at the same time, in those huge environments where you're a non-person, you're a number, you're victims of violence and so much anti-social behavior. So the fourth point that I think we can collaborate with is that, or talk about at least, is that we cannot go back to tradition. We don't have that option here in the Caribbean or Brazil, for example. Some great civilizations like India, Africa, Russia, Western Europe, they can go back to a great tradition. We can't. Right? New world societies, especially ours, are created from both conquerors and the conquered, slave owners and slaves who are not indigenous. So there are many commonalities with Latin America, except for the ones with large indigenous populations, but also with the southern United States as well. Now, I wanted to just acknowledge my Brazilian brother here. We are also a carnival-like culture. I think our particular ethos is Catholic, Hindu, and Yoruba. It's celebratory and it's open. With all those folk elements you mentioned, it immediately resonates with me when you talk about that. So, you know, but another thing that I'm so glad that I came and listened to the presentations here. Speakers here have also reminded me that we share much in common with the Levant, with Syria, with Lebanon, Turkey, and that part of the ancient world, which was always between, let's say, between Asia and Europe and Africa and Europe, or between the great civilizations. For example, in Trinidad and Tobago, our small, tiny island, you know, we're a mixture of Hindus like me, of Africans, of Muslims like Sheikh Imran Hussein, of Syrians, of Chinese, of Spanish, French, Portuguese, and British. And these aren't recent migrants. We've been living here for generations together as historical founding peoples, right? So we are struggling with creating a sense of peoplehood, and we have been doing so. It's not monolithic, but this is our challenge. So I want to thank you for the opportunity to make this presentation. I look forward to interacting with you and partnering in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. That is really great. So I appreciate very much this speech. That is really very important. I would like to stress the term epistemological sovereignty. That is the key, because nobody is sovereign epistemologically except the liberals now. So we are under the colonization, epistemological colonization. Great, and I agree with your point. Proclus, a Neoplatonic philosopher, has said the small is stronger than big. That is important. The small is always power. The mass, the big, it is always the weakness. So I agree absolutely. We need to revise and to revert the materialist, bourgeois, capitalist, colonialist relations between the inside of the human. In the human, the small is powerful. That is elite. Elite is the leading power, not the masses. If the mass is blind, it is totally useless. So I think that we should give huge attention to small identities. Sicilian, Georgian, Trinidad and Tobago, and the small, it is not little, a few, it is great. There are the spiritual power that is more than empire. So that is not, if Rafael has reminded us about Getulio Vargas, we could as well remember Stalin. He has put the energy and the power. I'm not a big fan of him, but he has taken the greatest power, spiritual power of Georgia, and has submitted to this power, the huge communist Russia. So the small, we should not discount the small. The small is the essential. So the heart is small, but it is a central organ. So I agree absolutely. And if, for example, in the great giant Russia or grand Brazil, for example, there will be this small part of the thought that will be the collapse. Collapse will follow. So we should be very, very careful with big entities. They could be very, very stupid and very, very weak. So we should not rely on the measure. So thank you very much for your brilliant explanation. Now I would like to give the word to Alejandro Vasquez. And I would like to say that in Peru, we have the great, the very important movement, great, not small, not small but great at the same time, of the people who share first political theory. They call themselves chrysalistas. It's a part of tradition, of intellectual tradition of Peru, and it is as well the other mythic, sacred parts of the world. So let us listen to Alejandro Vasquez.
Yes, Professor Dugin, I was not expecting to talk in this conference. This is just a shock for me. But anyways, since I have been translating a lot of work by Israel Lira, which is our main political theorist, and he's also the guy that brought upon us the vision of the four political theory and how to, let's say, how to land it in our own intellectual tradition and also cultural zeitgeist in Peru. We can say that for us, for political theory presented a better framework from which to begin to elaborate our alternatives to a proposal for a second version of what we wanted to see for Peru. Because first we tried to, most of the three political theories have been tried in one way or another to run its course in our country, and that didn't work exactly because the first political theory, it tried to be more like the French version of it, but at the end of the day, it started to take more inspiration in the English tradition, and then it went beyond with the American tradition, and it just became a mess, and it's self-contradictory in itself because, for example, the conservatives here are not that much different than the conservatives in the United States, which means they are basically classical liberals, but they are strongly Catholic in many ways, or Christian, or politically Christian. So this contradiction should not exist normally in any other country of the world, but over here it's possible to see those kind of contradictions. Now, for the second political theory, we had, of course, the political party led by and created by Jose Carlos Mariátegui, yes. But many people of the left forget that Jose Carlos Mariátegui was influenced by not only Oswald Spengler, because he mentions that in his not in his main works, but in his other notes. For example, in the notes he has on the problem of the public library, he mentions that we do not, at the moment, what he sends was that we do not have the intellectual tools in order to make critiques of the situation we are in, or start to amalgamate answers or solutions, propose solutions to our problems, because the library didn't have, and he mentions that we didn't have a Spengler, we didn't have any other, we didn't even have Marie Curie, for example. No, sorry, Marie. Yes, the chemist woman. I forgot her name, but anyways. So he mentions this, and he also had this vision, which was more like, let's say, not only Spenglerian, but also close to his vision of socialism, when he tried to amalgamate this idea of Inca, of the Inca tradition of socialism or Marxism. His vision was basically closer to Spengler's Prussianism and socialism. And this is something that is forgotten by the left, and they just leave it out. And for the fascism, they tried to create a version of not only Italian but also Spanish phalangism, but that didn't work because we didn't have. There are places where the state doesn't go, and we do not even have syndicates. So I mean, how can you propose national syndicalism, or how can you propose places, everything inside of the state when you do not have a state, but you have other forms of political organizations, like, for example, neighboring collectives, so also more tribalistic versions of like tribal units. They have their own vision as well. They have their own living space. They have their own conceptions of the world, of life, of different philosophies and inside of them. You just need to write them down in order to explain that. But for example, there is a tribe in Peru that their vision of the world is very similar to Buddhism, but they do not have access to Buddhism. So, I mean, with this collection of peoples, this collection of different traditions and different energies, what do we do? So our proposal was Crystalism, which is to form our own version of the political theory, but grounded in our very different collections of people, of traditions, of cultures, and what can we do from them? And this is what we saw that was the most, for us, was the only option to go. And it will be reflected in what we call as our second republic. Our second republic is not going to look like the modern version of it. It's going to probably look more like the Plato's Republic, like you mentioned, Professor Dugin, in political Platonism. So we are going to take all of these answers, and just as I'm doing right now, I'm trying to translate most of our work that we have been doing inside of the Center for Chrysalis Studies. I have published then on the page called The Revolutionary Conservative, and on Richard Spencer's Radix Journal as well. So that's what I have been doing so far. That's my contribution. But also I am trying to write other stuff, like, for example, the conception of the collection of souls as a nation in the political thought of thinking of Cornelio Codriano, for example. And there are many more things that we can do with it. I just want to thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. It is really amazing how first political theory obtains very, very special forms in different countries. So it looks like very organic. At the same time, it is very original. It is not repetitional something. It's just the source of inspiration and invitation and offer to search deeper in to your own identity, the kind of principles, the new principles. So that is truly amazing. So now our friend Vicente Quintero from Venezuela.
Vicente Quintero, I am a political scientist from Venezuela. I would like to briefly comment on hypocrisy, on liberal hypocrisy, and the journalism crisis. I think that the importance of fourth political theory lies there. I mean, right now we see that people can't agree anymore on what's true. I mean, we cannot agree anymore on what's true anymore, and what we should do. That's the reality in most of the Western countries, yeah. And I think that political hypocrisy is better seen when the Western countries start to push their political agenda through sanctions and military interventions, yeah. And we see that the most common argument is that the West is trying to support freedom overseas, yeah, and that's why they support and push military interventions overseas. However, we see that they don't believe nor support freedom at all. I mean, we should start defining what's freedom for the Atlantic world, yeah, for the Western powers that push military interventions and sanctions. They used to sanction countries that don't like to follow Western rules. Yeah, so they are not supporting people who want to be free, embrace their own religious, national, cultural identities. Yeah, and I think we have a great opportunity because of this moral crisis in the Western world, because they have lost credibility. People don't believe at all what they say, what they pursue, because they used to contradict themselves quite often. Yeah, and I think that we have to think about this. I mean, what are the values that we are embracing and why? We have to explain this to the whole world, to the whole, to all the peoples all around this planet. Yeah, to all the patriot circles that want to protect, embrace, and pursue their own values, their own identities. Yeah, and I think that's the path to follow. Yeah, they say that they embrace diversity. They say that they embrace freedom, but the truth is that actions speak louder than words. Yeah, and we see that they don't support freedom nor diversity. In reality, this global culture. I mean, what's this global culture about? This is about promoting a globalist agenda that goes against national cultures. So I just wanted to say thank you to all for listening, yeah, to me. Yeah, and that's all. I just wanted to briefly comment this.
Thank you very much. We have the last speaker from Southern America, Lucas Leiras.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lucas Leiras. I'm a research fellow in international law and a member of Nova Resistência, the Resistance. And today I will expose a geopolitical panorama of South America. My speech will not be closely linked to the fourth political theory as a theory, but to geopolitics, the internationalist dimension of fourth political theory is the depth of multipolarity, and so that people can then recover the respective traditions. We are experiencing currently a war between multipolarity and globalism, unipolarity, and I will talk a little about this war in South America. Well, the attitude of the US charges leading peoples has been one of domination, imposition, imperialism. The core of this policy is in the American ideology itself, based on the Monroe Doctrine of the 19th century. Specifically in South America, external interference in national policies became even more evident with the advent of the military dictatorships of the last century, which with the shallow excuse of avoiding communist threat, promoted decades of misery and persecution that preserved the subjugation of those countries to Washington during the Cold War. The process of redemocratization of Latin America was a flawed and vulnerable one. The transition of power witnessed by the exchange of the armed forces for civilian politicians represented nothing but the very interests of the same groups that had financed and supported the military takeover. In fact, when the American objectives bequeathed to the military were already achieved, they authorized transition of power, pacifying national policies with the capitulation of the left, which abandoned the armed struggle in favor of the Democratic Pact. Since then, the interference in Latin America has been triggered by the cooptation of parliamentary factions, feeding gigantic networks of corruption that fight each other publicly when truly they work for the interests of the same foreign power. When the false confrontation of these groups is functioning, the American foreign occupation works perfectly. However, any deviation from this reality is understood as an affront and gives room for the resurgence of Washington's interference. The most recent cases corroborating this fact are the failed attempted coup against the legitimate Bolivarian government in Caracas and the successful coup carried out against Bolivian President Morales, both in the past year. The coup against Bolivia ends with the closest experience of a laocratic government in Latin America. Morales' indigenism granted such autonomy to organic communities that we can classify it as a true laocracy. Now, however, Bolivia has become a zombie state without any geopolitical relevance and with internal disputes between different factions. On the other hand, Colombia has become an American base and is used heavily by Washington to attack Venezuela, which bravely resists imperialist attacks. In general, American attacks on independent peoples of the South have been intensified in recent years. This most likely is due to the fact that the period before the current one was marked by the growth of the political left, which, although subordinated to the liberal hegemony, acted with an agenda reasonably linked to social struggles, delaying having, if very little, the new liberal plans. Now, the same countries are facing the extraordinary advance of reactionary rights, with a great emphasis on Brazil, my country. Brazil has been suffering the worst period in its history. As we can see with the progress of paramilitary militias, dismantling of labor laws, and the pandemic. In Brazil, three factions are vying for power: an obscurantist wing that wants to destroy Brazil in a civil war, which is led by Olavo de Carvalho and other Bolsonaro's advisors, a strategist wing that considers an alliance with the US interesting for Brazil, which is led by the military, and a progressive wing, which wants to make Brazil a European social democracy, led by the Supreme Court. All these factions are absolutely dangerous to national interests. And the obscurantists are winning the dispute. Argentina recently completed this cycle of reactionary ascension and is now witnessing a return of the soft left, with the return of the Kirchner Party. And on the other hand, Chile, since last year, is undergoing several protests against Piñera's new liberal policies. Some results have been obtained, but the situation remains critical. Currently, the panorama of South America is terrible, absolutely terrible. With the exception of Venezuela, which is under a great crisis, all countries are in one way or another hostage to American interests, with some under governments that make this reality more explicit, like Brazil, and others under more camouflaged regimes. There is no doubt that American imperialism has never been so aggressive in South America. And the reason is simple. In the face of progress in the formation of a multipolar war, the geopolitical north is becoming increasingly reactive. So my organization, New Resistance, Nova Resistência, believes that the only way to overcome these difficulties is through geopolitical thinking based not only on realpolitik, but on eternal principles, myths, and traditions of the Austral peoples, the Southern peoples. We also believe in the Schmittian theory of the big space as a way of orienting geopolitical organization, a multipolar war, creating a South America telluric civilization, an empire of the South. Well, obviously there are many other important issues, but I tried to speak only the main ones to be quiet. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Lucas. I think that maybe we should end here. We should stop here because there was a kind of first approach for first test to make a kind of online congress, and in my opinion, is a great success. Because we can bring people together, we have let them speak, maybe not so at large as they would prefer, but there are some logical limits. So excuse us if we have violated some desires of you to speak more. So I would like to finish here, to stop here, and I would like to express my gratitude to all of you, my happiness to see old friends and to meet new ones, and I have some suggestions. First of all, in my opinion, it was first International Congress, but not the last. It is so appealing, so interesting for myself and for the people with whom I have shared my impressions. So for sure we will continue. So so that is the first. That's beginning, just beginning. And technically it worked good, so I am very pleased with that. Next point, I would like in the future, for example, I suggest expand our network to cooperate on the horizontal level between the people, between the country. Because first political theory is not relied on some centralized general staff. We are all equal in some way. The idea belongs to those who understand it. There is no copyright in the world of ideas. There is no copyright in the world of angels. So we should be devoted to ideas and not use them, not master them. They are more powerful. They are eternal. So I suppose that we should create the network, global network, starting from Thailand, India, Pakistan, China, Japan, to Trinidad and Tobago, Brazil, United States, passing from by Eurasia. Eurasia is in the middle of all that. So that is open. You should not wait for invitation. The call is inside of yourself. So let's respond to the inner call, not from external. And we are helping to this call to be heard. So I think that was really, really great. I suggest to stay in touch. There are some, now we could publish to the end the same Paindeuma TV, same email address, which we can provide. If you have missed some people, we could help you to find them, or you find by yourself. So I suggest to continue this cooperation on the network with us or without us. We just the bridge, nexus, not the commanders. There is no commanders. Your commanders are your identities. So in first political theory, there is no central committee. It's up to you to create your organizational cultural structure based on your tradition. So I suggest you to continue in that way, to make something like that for yourself. May use this Zoom, use this other means in order to promote idea, to speak, to exchange. Second point, I'm sure that we need somehow to establish online university to promote alternative epistemology. So this Alex Win like Yandex.ru, that is email you could use to communicate. But about this online university, let us start to put that into practice as well. Let us start to find some strategies. There are many professors fired by globalist liberals all through the world. Very, very high professional professors and scholars. We need scientists. We need to support them. We need creating a network of the freedom of the speech without any regard. Maybe they are honest liberals. They could participate. We are really tolerant people, but not the tolerant. Tolerance is based on the indifference. We are loving people. We are open people. We are heart people, the people of heart. So I suggest to promote that, to try to find maybe material possibility of funding. It's not the goal. So when there is the good goal, there will be the means, the tools. We should not start with something we have. We should start with something we want, we desire. That is more noble. So that is, I think, that would be very important. And last, next point, I would suggest for the future conferences to narrow topics. So, for example, that could attract less people, but concentrated on, for example, or some geopolitical issue, some problem of philosophical problem of Platonopolis, or something like some culture, some civilization, on some to localize a little bit, to put to more concrete area and space, and discuss that and propose it. Not only wait when someone proposes. So be active. And the last point, I would suggest to organize something like that on different languages. So there is the huge amount of the people in Italy. I know many, the hundreds, maybe thousands of them that should be logically eager to participate. And we need to prepare that. With Italy, I'm absolutely sure. With France, a little less, but in Italy, we could create this in Italian language. The next point, I'm absolutely sure that we could make that in the Spanish language for Latin America. Spanish, Portuguese, they not too far. So for Latin America to organize some conference on forced political theory, but working especially with Spanish language, with Castellano, and trying to put together a representative of all movements, Peronistas from Argentine, many other leftists, maybe rightists, no important. So that is second idea. So Spanish as language and Italian as language. The language are as well the culture, that history. So I suggest to go in that way, to think about Italian and Spanish conference on forced political theory, and continue to make as well general English speaking conference, because at least it helps us. We use the tool of riding the tiger. We use the tool of the enemy, and we are using globalization and English Anglophonic sphere, global sphere, we could use for our interests. So sorry for not giving the word to some people who wanted, because some people we could not get in touch, maybe by technical reasons, by others. So thank you very much once more, and it's just a beginning, Please, and to continue this this initiative, to put this beginning in the process, it is up to you. That everybody should can participate. It is invited. That is our offer. Tim Kirby has said that we don't give the offer. It is our offer to be active and follow your path, not our path. So that will be our victory. Thank you very much. Thank you for all participation, speaker, and attendees. Best wishes. We will win.
Небо, земля, люди-боги и мы, распятые на кресте толкования. Небо, земля, люди-боги